Well, August is once again packed with games. We've got massive titles this month like Black Myth Wukong, Star Wars Outlaws, and this tiny little dead game called World of Warcraft: The War Within that a few people might have heard of. But along with all that, we got indies, we've got double A's, we've got comedy titles like Thank Goodness You're Here, we've got Squirrel with a Gun, and the return of a bit of a legend actually with World of Goo 2. And I know it won't register in many people's heads, but World of Goo was right up there in and around Braid when it came to actually kicking off like the modern indie game as a thing way back around 2008. And then we've got the likes of Tactical Breach Wizards, which looks pretty damn cool, and I've loved everything that developer has put out. But of course, if you want to know about the top games that are coming out every single week, then you gotta get over to Bellular.games, because each Monday's loading screen newsletter that we publish highlights all of the games that are worth looking at within that week. So give that a shot. It's also the best way to support our team. And with that said, let's get into the most interesting games of August. First up then, we've got Star Wars Bounty Hunter, which is of course right back from that era of PS2 Star Wars games. It was a pretty damn good era. In this case, it is done by Asper, but I suppose unlike the Battlefront collection, which was a little bit traumatic in the internet, this time there are no, annoying multiplayer functions to make life complex. So what this is then is the remaster of the 2002 tie-in game where you play as Jango Fett. It's a third-person shooter where you basically go about the seedy underbelly of Star Wars. You're taking out Dark Jedi, you're collecting bounties, doing that sort of thing. The original game was pretty well regarded. I honestly think that this one looks pretty decent based on the trailers, and they've also made good on a planned Easter egg in the original that never actually got made, and it's pretty simple. If you finish the game, you get Boba Fett's armor. And on the same day, we've got Thank Goodness You're Here. It's by the developer called Supper, and basically, it's a slice of the north of England as a little bit of a bantery adventure. It's got Matt Berry doing voicing, which for a lot of people will pretty much mean they have to buy it to see what bizarre noises he makes. In the game, you go through a town called Barnsworth. You're a traveling salesman. You're doing odd jobs for locals who are a little bit more odd. And I'd say essentially what they're doing is turning the British comedy farce into a video game. There's lots of innuendo. There's Matt Berry. Let's hope that there is plenty of both innuendo and Matt Berry put together. And look, I know things are usually dominated by AAA loot shooters, but seriously, if you just go off-piste, a game like this can actually just give you a few hours of a good time, which is a bloody good thing to have, so definitely check it out. And then coming out the second, we've got World of Goo 2, which is one that actually brings me back. I remember playing the original game on my iPad. World of Goo basically was It was awesome. It was one of the first wave of indie games. And I mean, in the same way that you had the likes of Braid, World of Goo was like there in that first cohort that actually defined a part of our industry. So in this case, it is looking like more of the same, but you know what, actually, that's good. If it is more World of Goo, I will be happy. And what that basically means is puzzling, delightful presentation, and a deeply satirical narrative. So definitely have it in your radar. Then we've got Fields of Mystra. This is one that is absolutely trying to snipe me. It's coming out in early access on PC, and what it is a Game Boy Advance aesthetic farming sim life RPG, which means that if you, like me, played loads of Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town when you were younger, then oh boy, this is basically just them going for us. It's got a full suite of the expected mechanics. There is farming, animal husbandry, blacksmithing, romance, and while you're doing all of those things, you're restoring the land to its nice magical origins. And so, if you like 80s anime-inspired character design, if you like the GBA aesthetic with this sort of game, then this is going to be one for you. And honestly, the numbers do back it up, because this is the 5th most followed game on Steam that's releasing this month. So even though it might not have a crazy big budget, well, guess what? By what people are willing to wishlist and follow in Steam, this is actually one of the month's big hitters. Warhammer 40k Speed Freaks. Because look, if you want to have, I guess, Mad Max, Buck Green, third-person combat racing, then obviously doing orc shenanigan bullshit is entirely what you're going to be doing. So a perfect merger of like gameplay, genre, and franchise. In this case, with the game, you're getting multiple different modes. There's a payload delivery one, where the payload is basically a big stomp-a-mech, and there's a capture point mode, basically with 8-player teams. Just vehicle combat insanity, which, I mean, come on, vehicle combat games rock. You've got big customization of loads of different vehicles, but some of that will partially be driven by virtual currency, so we'll have to see how that'll play out. Next, time for something a little bit different with Creatures of Ava. Now, I know within gaming there's been just like constant search for a sort of creature taming game that's less of a Pal World, less of a Pokemon, that's trying to do something a little bit different. Basically think of the way that in, say, Luigi's Mansion, right? You are using your different tools to deal with the ghosts and to solve puzzles and open up new areas. Think about that, but taming creatures and alien worlds. And also, it has been picked up by Game Pass, which should mean that at least for a lot of us, you can access it for zero extra money. Our next game then is Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers. It comes from Purple Moss Collections, published by Yogscast Games actually, and it's on PC. And basically, right, it's the sort of game that I think, I don't want to say it makes more sense, but it will have more of a clear market because of Balatro, right? Balatro came out basically just stupid, degenerate, gambling, fun games, really cracked that open, and what we're essentially having here is another slice in and around that sort of part of the game's Venn diagram. The idea is you're taking on 60 different characters, they've got their own decks, there's a revolving campaign, you're building up your decks each time, and yeah, basically what they say, to be honest, their own marketing copy is great here. All the degeneracy from a seedy casino, but with no risk to your finances, mental health, or your loved ones. So, yeah. It's a slice of bollocks, which is pretty much what I want from a game like this. And then we've got SteamWorld Heist 2, and it's really interesting what they've done with SteamWorld. There are so many games within the sort of SteamWorld moniker that have got so many, just so many different types of gameplay. In this case, though, it's Heist, so turn-based tactical shooter stuff that's all built around trick shots and ricochets as you go through steampunk dungeons. That stuff's pretty cool. The original did it well, and new features this time include the likes of full overworld exploration and also real-time naval battles. Be it boats or spaceships, I very much love naval combat, so that's kind of interesting to me. And I think for a studio, the idea of having like the same core world, but being able to make lots of different sorts of games within that world, that just seems like a real healthy version of things where, yes, you get your IP, you actually get to sort of build that long-term brand value, but as developers, well, you get to not be bored out of your skin making the same damn thing again and again. Next up, and published by Devolver Digital, we've got the Crush House. This one's neat. So it is essentially a first-person shooter that is based off reality TV, very much based off the likes of, say, Big Brother, where you're shooting a 1999 TV show and you're essentially choosing where to like put your cameras and that kind of thing. And that, of course, means you've got to understand audience demand. You've got to showcase the characters that the people want to watch. You've got to capture the various plot developments in this reality TV show with your cameras, all of course while meeting demands from the network that are going to be driven by advertising. This, to me, is so goddamn cool. It is almost near to a fantasy game idea that I have, which is basically just this, but it's Ghost Adventures. So hey, if you want to do that next, please do. Anyway, as a secondary layer to all of that stuff, after the show stops airing, you basically get to explore the facility and, you know, there's spooky things. Maybe some dark things, maybe some secrets about the cast. I always love that kind of thing. Brings me right back to whenever you go off-piste in the original Portal. But anyway, let's move on to our next game. Level 0 Extraction. This is one that to me is quite noteworthy. Now, what it is a game is a PvPvE multiplayer loot extraction shooter. To some of you, you're interested now. To others, you've just completely glazed over. But there is a bit of a reason why this is interesting to me, and that is, you're essentially doing tactical mercenaries versus alien monsters, but it's in an underground SCP-style facility. Now, if you don't know what the whole SCP thing is, basically just imagine like horror, internet first, younger audience. It's very much the sort of energy that drove the likes of Lethal Company to absolutely dominate Steam for a while there. There are some great twists to this one though. So number one, not all of the monsters are AI, some of the monsters are players. And the other thing is that whenever you die, well, actually good news, you can then spawn in as a drone camera to try and help your squad still survive. And certainly in terms of numbers, I've got high expectations here. This was one of the most played games of the last Steam Next Fest. It's launching into early access. We've got the likes of Lethal Company that I think is validating this kind of like area of games development. So I'm expecting something pretty big actually. And again, the extraction shooter is an amazing format of a game, one that I think will do extremely well outside of the traditional Tarkov-like setting. Next, a quick mention for a remaster. It is Sam & Max The Devil's Playhouse Remastered. So what this is a remaster of the original, actually done with plenty of members from the original dev team, and it is the final Telltale Sam & Max game being remastered. It's basically the end of a trilogy of remasters. Both of the previous entries are pretty well regarded, and basically, right, if you liked Sam & Max, this could be a good way for you to relive some of those good old days. And if you're new, the remaster trilogy will be done, which will just mean you've got a nice big slice of sort of narrative comedy adventure game to go and play. So do you remember the game XIII? It pushed some graphics forward in the past, and it had a remaster that absolutely did not go down well. Well, this is actually a game that in many ways has got nothing to do with that, but it does have some of the same aesthetic. I think that will certainly catch people. And what it is a short form FPS where you're a secret agent taking revenge against the agency who burned you. Very much a by any means necessary killing people thing. So that means immersive sim style weapon kills, environmental damage, parkour based movement. Honestly, pretty damn cool stuff. It's essentially formed of miniature open world, highly replayable sandboxes where, you know, you'll be doing things like trying to get better times, do different mini objectives, kill people in new and imaginative ways. And it's by Strange Scaffold, who are doing actually interesting things. You may know the name Xalavier Nelson. Well, basically, he's got pretty cool ideas for games. I mean, his current one, let's just say, is it's about click-holding. Click-holding. Think about that. Anyway, this is from a studio that he founded. He's the creative director. What they basically do is lots of games. They do them faster, they do them cheaper, and they basically just go and do niche, fun, wacky shit. I absolutely love this as a model of game development, and at the very least, I'll say it's one that's highly inspirational to me when I think about the sorts of things I'd want to do next. So I think they've got a cool mission. They actually go out there, they try to do creatively interesting stuff. And if you want to check out another one of their games, El Paso Somewhere is absolutely one to do. Basically, you got paranormal stuff. Mix that in with Max Payne. Yeah, it's totally worth checking out. Next, then, if you like being a bit of an animal and a bit of an asshole, then Just Crow Things is probably one for you. It's another one of those sandbox level-based animal chaos games. In this case, you're a crow that is trying to recover her property. You can pick up and use just about any item in the game, or of course, you can just drop it on people. And look, corvids are awesome. Crows are awesome, so having a puzzle-based comedy game where you're doing stuff by any means necessary as a crow, yeah, thumbs up. And on the 20th, something that is decidedly higher budget. It's from Game Science, and it is Black Myth Wukong. This game, since its initial showcase, has been absolutely stunning people, like graphically, gameplay-wise, and also what it is a Journey to the West game that is from an indie Chinese team. That's actually great. So in this case, they were made of ex-Tencent devs. They were later then funded by both NetEase and Tencent, funnily enough. But it's one of those things where as the games industry grows in different parts of the world, it now means that we get the likes of Journey to the West, but done by a team from there who'll have that like just deeper cultural knowledge of it. So pretty exciting. It's their first time developing for PC and console, and my god, for a first time, that's absolutely insane. As a game, it's a Souls-like action game. It is very much built around boss fights against mythological monsters. You're of course playing as Sun Wukong, and yeah, that means your skills and your upgrades are very much reflecting the Monkey King's legendary different skills for movement and trickery, very much leaning into a heavy combo system. The core idea there is player expression, and I think this is a game that has really wowed every time that it's been shown off. Pretty damn good reason. The next game we're pointing out for you then is Dustborn, and I've got to say, even just looking at the trailers, I think this thing is absolutely goddamn gorgeous. I think the graphical presentation, man, yeah, it just sucks me in. So anyway, it's a game from Red Threads. It's being published by Quantum Dream. It's on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. And it's from the devs of the beloved Dreamfall Chapters adventure games, but this time it is quite a bit more focused on combat, and it's a combat model that is essentially all about the synergies and combos between different party powers. It's an action RPG about a road trip where you're smuggling a package across a fascist America, while of course keeping in disguise as a punk band. Crisply executed, comic book inspired visuals, Dust Bowl Americana setting. Yeah, honestly, to me, looks pretty strong. So the sell for this game is extremely clear. The game is called Mika and the Witch's Mountain, and basically, Do you like Kiki's Delivery Service, the Ghibli movie? Because if you like that, that's basically what they're giving you here. You've got kind of Ghibli, Wind Waker inspired visuals. It's a game where you're a witch, you're delivering packages, you're flying in a broom. It came from a successful Kickstarter, and basically low stakes puzzling, exploring about the place. Is Kiki's Delivery Service, which is a class movie, which, by the way, if you want to watch a really good movie, check that out. And still fantasy, but a little bit different, we've got Tactical Breach Wizards. This is totally meshing many things that I'm interested in. So what it is a tactics RPG where you are renegade wizards with guns trying to unwind a conspiracy. It's from the maker of Gunpoint and Heat Signature, who, by the way, used to be, I believe, the editor-in-chief of PC Gamer. He picked up Game Maker and just decided to make games, and it worked out bloody well for him. So it's essentially a campaign-driven game, simplistic art style. You've got free turn rewinds to encourage some experimentation with your pretty damn varied kit. And I'd say, well, look, Tom Francis makes fairly interesting games. I would totally recommend giving them a shot. And on the 23rd, it's time for Concord. Yes, Concord, the live service that has got no battle pass, only cosmetics for you to buy, that'll be giving you new story on a weekly basis, that's got, maps, characters, and all that stuff being given away for free. And that had a very, very weak showing in terms of things for PC players. It did not produce numbers during its beta weekends. We don't really know what the PlayStation numbers are like. I'd certainly say from my perspective, it looks like a fun game. It looks like loads of their mechanics are really well designed. Lots of the shooting looks compelling, but I'll say when I look at the character roster, and there's been a lot of people saying, oh my, these characters are ugly because of, these are ugly because of the woke, or, whatever. I mean, take a look at Overwatch. That is definitely a game that is socially conscious. It's also a game where every character is absolutely hot, really fucking hot. The problem in this game, in my opinion, is they're just really weak character designs. Their colors are weak, their silhouettes are weak. This, I don't think, is a case of them being purposefully bad. It's just there is no sauce in the art direction, and that means you have characters that just look generic. The way that they appeared in my head was just as if you hit the randomize button a few times in a character creator, and you basically said, whatever, that'll do. So no, I don't think there's a grand conspiracy to make these characters ugly. It's just they're not that well designed compared to other games where I suppose one could level the same sort of political criticisms. But no, the point is, like, the Overwatch characters are just really, really well designed. These characters are not as well designed. I don't think it's got much to do with identity or anything like that. It just doesn't have the sauce, man. And that's essentially the problem. This is a game that looks excellent in lots of technical ways, but it's got no sauce. And on the 26th, we've got World of Warcraft: The War Within, which technically does have its early access on the 22nd. But look, I talk about that game on an entire other YouTube channel. So let's leave the World of Warcraft for there and move on to Endzone II. And what it is a sequel to Endzone, which was a pretty good, actually, cult hit, post-apocalyptic city builder. It's launching into early access, and you basically have got much more direct control over a larger map with multiple settlements as compared to the initial game. And they've also added in vehicles and an expedition system for exploring. So I can see that all coming together to just make quite a bit more of a cohesive post-apocalypse experience. And on the 27th, Smite II, which is coming from Titan Forge Games, which absolutely raised my eyebrow because I just think, that's Hi-Rez Studios, right? But again, remember, Hi-Rez did that thing where they just split all their studios up. Anyway, what this is, it's Smite, but it is rebuilt, in this case using Unreal Engine 5. It is still the 5v5 god-based MOBA, but there are no direct transfers of content from 1 to 2 because of the engine change, but everything in Season 11 of Smite 1, along with some additional features, will allow for a little bit of cross-pollination here. The basic pitch is the same, but you can expect better look and feel because of the engine change. Moving on then to the 29th, we've got Visions of Mana, which, funny enough, if you haven't heard of that franchise in a while, that's because it's actually the first one in 18 years, but Kenichi Ishii is actually back, and certainly looking at the trailer, right? This thing is goddamn gorgeous. I think it's very much a case where the more stylized, more simple art styles really just do benefit from modern rendering techniques. That is absolutely on show here. Big picture, what we're getting here is a classic franchise coming back, but actually being modernized, both in terms of the visuals and the combat. Honestly, to me, even though I'm not humongously like a JRPG guy, it does just look really appealing. I think the graphics have got a lot to do with that. And then we've got Squirrel with a gun. This is from DD Creations LLC. It's on PC, and I think the reason why it's in today's video is because it absolutely has blown up in social media. I certainly get why it's exploded in social media that much. I suppose I'll say, though, at least personally, the closer something looks to Goat Sim, the less I want to go anywhere near it, so I will wait, but I certainly do get why it's blown up. And I guess speaking of blowing up, that does kind of cover our next game, which is Emio, the Smiling Man Famicom Detective Club, which I suppose you think of Famicom, you think of the past, and that certainly would be right because, well, this is a 35-year-old franchise, right? These were a bunch of detective visual novels from Nintendo way back in the day. And now they've basically decided to revive the series. Now, they kind of did that before, where there were remakes in 2021. This, though, is a full revival. And certainly, I mean, looking at basically a 35-year-old visual novel, I mean, it does kind of bring me back. There are certainly VN aspects to the work that we've done. So yeah, I don't know. I suppose it's like a little bit of a special place in the industry. I think it's really cool that Nintendo are happy for a project like this to exist. So I suppose big thumbs up to them. And then next on the 30th, we have got Breachway. Basically, right? Do you like some sort of deck builder gameplay? Did you like FTL, the video game? If so, then Edgeflow has made this game for you. And funny enough, it has been picked up by Hooded Horse. I think that's a fairly relevant thing to say, given Manor Lords and a few other projects there. Certainly seen as an up-and-coming publisher that's actually got quite a good eye for video games. In this case, right, it is roguelike ship battles. I mean, quite a lot of an FTL inspiration, certainly looking like there's quite a bit more detail, very much a different art style. You are going from the left of the map to the right of the map through various different nodes. Those nodes will involve you finding out about like different factions, earning different weapons, meeting new characters, all of that good stuff. Basically, it's a kind of game that I know I love because FTL is a game that immediately just made me want to go and make games. So if they're able to do anything even close, then I think they'll be on to a winner. And then finally, a game that's got a lot of publicity and has certainly got quite a lot of pushback. Now, some of that pushback I can understand. The game, of course, is Star Wars Outlaws. Now, the pushback that I can understand would be the Ubisoft kind of modern business model where, you know, they do single player games, but they generally will try to basically upsell you on the season pass fairly early, and where you log in on day one and see a bunch of microtransactions for cosmetics. That is the sort of thing that has been distasteful to me for a very long time, because most of the things that people have been upset about with this game and some recent Ubisoft outings, like Ubisoft have been doing that, and actually they've done it worse in the past. I'm thinking about, say, the launch of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So that stuff is pretty unfortunate. Now, I'm somebody who will never go anywhere near the additional purchases unless I'm buying content and I feel like it's, it's a good deal. So when I look at the game big picture, what I basically see is a lot of Ubisoft budget. This is a 50 to 60 hour long game with an absolutely humongous looking world. I mean, at the very least from what they've shown, there's a lot of attention to detail here. I'm not massively a Star Wars guy, but this is a rendition of that world that I at least have found to be immediately quite grabbing. Now, the developers themselves have talked about how this, yes, it is an Ubisoft game with a very big budget, but they basically are not going in the turbo bloat direction. So I kind of look at all of those things. I see it trying to do heistish gameplay. If they are able to pull off the content, then I can see this being a really great time. I think the presentation is strong. I think the essential fantasy is strong. I think the design of just aliens, areas, ships, that stuff that I've seen so far, great. I just need to see that the content is actually good. So if this reviews fairly well, then I'd say this, for me, could end up being a bit of a no-brainer. That being said, if it's not worth the full asking price for you, the good news is these games from Ubisoft, well, they'll probably be pretty heavily discounted by Christmas. So there you have it. August, once again, is an absolutely crammed month for games. This industry is insane. I mean, I was thinking, like, of today's list of games, what are the ones that I'm going to, like, say are my, like, big personal pick? But you know what the problem is? I can't do that because I haven't actually got to playing Cataclysmo yet from last month. And the same goes for so many other games. Seriously, there are too many. So if you want to help me and your fellow viewers out with prioritizing things, what from last month did you play and did you love? And for this month, what are the things that have grabbed you the most? Let me know. With that said, I'll see you back here again soon.